So the next step, of course, is that now I have a leader with yarn on it, yay, and on my spindle, and I have fiber over here. Now, another myth that often gets bandied about is that you can't spin from this, which is a full chunk of top. Now, it really depends on the top. Some come in really compressed, compacted things that are really hard to draft from, and those can be a problem. But if you have a really nice top, like say this, which is, you can see is wide and open and loose, and you can see light through it, you can draft from this just fine. Now, first thing is to make sure that it stays out of your way. And there's lots of ways to do this. If I'm walking around while spindling, then I usually pull off a chunk of this because I'm not quite agile enough to keep this on my arm while I'm trying to walk and not run into people. So, here you've got a little bit of fluff sticking out from the end of your top, and I've got a little bit of fluff sticking out from the end of my yarn. Put them together, spin, and I am now spinning on my drop spindle. Yay. Okay. Now, admittedly, that was a fairly weak spin, flick spin. This is also one disadvantage of this being a light spindle is that, like top whorls, light spindles tends to not spin quite as long as heavy ones. But you can see, and you can see it gyroscoping down there, but you can also see that it doesn't affect my spindling at all. It spins just fine. I'm spinning really nice, super fine lace weight. You can see I'm drafting out really nice and fine here, and you can see it stopped spinning down there, so I have to flick it again. I'm using a flick here rather than a thigh roll because I have difficulty thigh rolling this tiny little spindle. It's not a defect of the spindle, that's a defect of me. But you can see, here I have super fine yarn on a very light bottom whorl drop spindle. And then once I have some yarn, I go back down here, I pop the half hitch that I made over my finger off the top, which I'm not very good at on this one. There we go. Wind it back on the bottom, as you can see, like that. And I have yarn on my spindle. And then as once I'm almost done winding on, bottom whorls tend to work with a little bit better with a little bit longer leader, so I'll probably leave this much. I will spiral it up the shaft again, like so. Wrap it around my finger again, like so. Slide it off my finger, and I'm ready to continue. That's it for this spindle, for the moment. I could, despite this being tiny, I could pack on quite a bit of yarn, but for now I'm going to move on. Another myth of bottom whorls, and spindles in general, is that you can only spin fine yarn with super light top whorl spindles. This is a bottom whorl spindle. It's not super heavy as spindles go. It's 1.5 ounces. But on the scale of light spindles, this isn't really one of them. This spindle is made by Spindlewood, and as you can see, it's beautiful bird's eye maple. They're only recently getting into making more bottom whorls, but if you email them, they are more than happy to make you bottom whorl spindles, and bottom whorl spindles are awesome. So, just like before, this one I've already got a leader started on. Candy stripe it up the side of the shaft. Oops, I'm gonna pull off a little bit more. There you go. Wrap it around your finger, slide it off your finger, and we've got it there. Then we take our top again. Try to get it so that it's not going to catch. Take your spindle, pull off the extra fiber that's sitting around because I've been fussing with it too much, and start spinning just like before, just like every top whorl you've ever spun with or seen someone else spin with. Now, like I said, the myth that I'm actually dealing with here is that you can't spin fine on a bottom whorl, or that you can't spin fine on a heavier spindle. Now, something a lot of people don't think about when they think about not being able to spin on much weight is that as you're spinning, and you're spinning lots of this lovely new super fine yarn, as you can see, I've got, you know, a fine, very fine handful of small handful of fibers in this thread here, and as you can see with the larger, heavier whorl, this spins a lot longer than my little one. Once I spin a lot of this, it's going to be on the spindle, and fiber, while fairly light, does actually weigh something, which means that if I want to spin, say, yarn for socks, then I need to be able to put a good 2 ounces or so on a spindle. Now, if I can only spin lace weight on a spindle that weighs a fraction of an ounce, I'm going to be in trouble because I'm going to have to splice all of those pieces. Luckily, I don't. I can pack 2 ounces on my, about exactly 2 ounces on my, say, 0.8 ounce spindle, which is not this one, and still continue to spin lace weight, despite the fact that that spindle is now closing in on 3 ounces, which is no longer light. So this one starts at 1.5 ounces, so, but you can see that I'm having no problem spinning lace weight on it, and can continue to spin quite a bit more on this, and because it's a larger spindle with a longer shaft and a heavier whorl, I can, trying to do this from too far out, there we go, I can pack a lot on this spindle and have no problem spinning super fine little frog hair yarn. Isn't that great? And so, those are 2 myths of bottom whorl spindles. The big trick with bottom whorl spindles is don't be afraid of them. They're basically the same as top whorl spindles. The only difference is that when you wrap it up the shaft, you have to actually wrap it up the shaft, not run it straight up the side. And when you get to the top, you have to put a half hitch on the top. Or if you don't have a notch, then some extra slick ones need a double half hitch. But, you know, again, not a big deal. Just wrap it around your finger, put your finger on the top of the spindle, and slide it off, and you have a half hitch. That's all there is.